there are more chapters coming up we haven't even seen yet that are going to keep ourselves the collective focused, especially if the Russians start trying to annex territories within Ukraine.
Can I ask you first a question, just looking forward? Do you believe that American support for Ukraine's war effort will stay strong, even as Russia appears, well, not so far off taking control of Donbass, and as at the same time, the economic picture around the world, including in the US, gets tougher?
It's a great question because, again, I think the overwhelming majority in my country, as in yours, is solidly behind Ukraine in its fight, really for survival and its existence. But the daily ins and outs of lives in our country, inflation, gas prices, and all that can take some of the edge off of the support. But I think in the big picture, it'll be how it does. But I think that we're all in. It is going to be a bit of an endurance test.
Yes.
But we got to stay the course. I think the populations will do that, in part because how grisly and awful this aggression has been.
Yes. Let me put to you a question, which you'll hear me later on, put to the Ukrainian ambassador to the United Nations, and it's this: there are midterm elections coming up in America. The Republican Party are generally forecast to do very well. They could take control of one or both houses on Capitol Hill. And Donald Trump, the former president, enormously influential still in the Republican Party, has been talking about the need to spend money on schools in America, not on Ukrainian weapons. Now, will that sort of thinking permeate through the Republican Party as they gain in power, if they do, on Capitol Hill? And could that change the direction of American policy?
It's certainly a factor. But again, I think that what is important is that so far in support of the existential defense of Ukraine has overwhelming bipartisan support on the Hill, if you will. Yes, there could be a hard right factor to it, but as long as this aggression just grinds itself out and is seen for what it is, yeah, there may be weakening in the positions, but I don't believe it will all melt away in its entirety. It may become more complex. But I think there are more chapters coming up we haven't even seen yet that are going to keep ourselves the collective focused, especially if the Russians start trying to annex territories within Ukraine, additional territories.
And let me ask you a more immediate question then. Joe Biden, the president of the United States, has said, yes, he wants to help supply Ukraine with more weapon system. And there are, I think, multiple launch missile systems on the way. But they're medium range, not long range missile systems. Why not long range missiles, which the Ukrainians say they want for the defense of the Donbass?
I think I'm on this one, and believe me, I've been in variations of the inside in the past, and they're agonizing about this. But the decision, and these are sober, hard-thinking individuals that are, that want to do all they can for Ukraine. But we're talking about the multiple rocket launchers, the so-called ATACMS and HIMARS. One has a range of 50, 60, 70, 80 miles. That's pretty deep, and they're pretty effective systems. The other, the higher range one, is a couple hundred miles potentially. Yeah. And it would not be I think right now they're trying to keep this awful contact contained. They want to send them a lot of very capable missiles, but not those that could strike deep into the Russian heartland. That gives then Vladimir Putin even more incentive and motivation to get his population turned into total support for this conflict. And we'll see as farther down you get that it is getting increasingly shaky.
Yes, it is still something of a standoff, isn't it, when it comes to questions of escalation. So this is a hypothetical question. If Russia were to escalate to the point of striking into NATO territory, maybe taking aim at part of a supply chain, supplying weapons to the Ukrainian military, do you reckon NATO would reply in kind?
I think that whatever and you mentioned in kind, I don't know if it would be a missiles and rockets into Russia, but there will be a very tough reaction.
Yes.
Whatever it is, that I do believe, involving my country and yours as well.
I just wonder what that would look like if it's not a strike into Russian territory, which obviously would be a big escalation, even or a big counter-escalation. What could a firm response of the kind you're talking about involve?
I mean, it could be everything from if you will, a measured response into Russian buildup on the borders, in not trying to ratchet above whatever the Russian. I have to believe that's at the top end, and then there's just all kinds of other things and ways they can put pressure across the board, because this isn't just NATO and the U.S., this is the European Union. This really becomes an all hands on deck, because you get Article 5, and this, I think the Russians actually do respect that. Then we're on the edge of all bets are off.
Yes.
And the Russians would be playing an extremely dangerous game. There is a whole spectrum you can bet that the planners are working on. I can't tell you what the specifics would be.
No, we should point out the obvious, which is Russia has not struck into NATO territory, and the idea of that sort of escalation is not an active consideration. But I was really interested to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you for joining us.